My word, look at that. Oh my God. Can I put that down? Thank you, thank you, thank you. There it is. Look at all that glitters is not gold. Just to say something, that work you were showing, some of it was mine. I was creative director on much of it. Lots of other creative people were involved in that. So I've always been very keen about making sure people get credit for what they do. It's very important. Anyway.
Well, it's wonderful to see it, and it's such a great kind of like
brilliant.
archive.
It is like your life going past in a couple of minutes, though, isn't it? You think, is that it?
It is quite interesting, though, when you look at the 100 best ads of all time. There's a lot of work which you've been involved in on that. And Kipper is one of them, the Lego Kipper.
Yeah, Lego Kipper, which won the Grand Prix at Cannes in 79 or 80, actually.
Yeah.
In the days when it was only one Grand Prix. They give out fucking Grand Prix now like they're confetti. Oh, we'll have a Grand Prix.
What is it?
You can't, you walk down the croisette, people bump into people with bloody...
I know, we don't even meet creative people
you
in
trip
Cannes
up
anymore.
over them on the floor.
Yeah. So could you set an argument for us, because we don't know whether it's actually Tommy Cooper who did the voiceover for that, or
No,
a
it
sound
wasn't.
alike.
No, it was, I can't remember the actor, but there was a joke at the time that said, in the Tommy Cooper sound-alike competition, Tommy Cooper came third. And it wasn't Tommy Cooper. It was genius as he was pretty, it was hard to get him to take it seriously. So no, you have got somebody else to do it. No, it was brilliant, that. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So you started off, your career, I mean, most people know you as obviously the figurehead of BBH, but you started your career, well, you were a founder of Saatchi & Saatchi. You started with
Indeed,
Saatchi.
in 1970. But my first job in advertising was an agency called Benton & Bowles, which no longer exists, American agency in Knightsbridge. And it was a kind of an interesting experience. And there was a lesson in that. I left in 65 to get into advertising. I got two job offers, one Y&R, one at Benton & Bowles. Y&R was going to pay me twice as much as Benton & Bowles. And I said to a friend of mine, look, I've got these two offers, went through the whole thing, and he said, he was in the business, he said, well, John, B&B, I know they're going to pay you half, but they've got a great, creative director coming over from New York to take over the creative department. I really, really think you ought to go there. So I did, even though I was being paid half. It didn't work out, but 2 weeks into my being at Benton & Bowles, the creative director walked in and he said to me, so I found a writer for you to work with, my art director. So I said, so what's his name? And he said, Charles Saatchi. And I went, oh, shit. He's Italian, lives at home with mum and can't spell. Just my life as a writer. Well, I was right on two fronts, but not on the Italian front. But my point about that was, had I taken the money, I wouldn't have met Charlie. We wouldn't have got together. I wouldn't have been a founder shareholder in Saatchi & Saatchi. And who knows, your life. So the lesson in that is go for the opportunity, not the money.
But you left Saatchi's, obviously, to TBWA. But culturally now, Saatchi seems very different to BBH. What made you leave?
Well, I think in the end you get to a point, and I'm a great admirer of Charlie. People criticize him for lots of things, but he was brilliant in lots of ways. You learn from him that he was fantastic at identifying the issue you wanted to solve. You talk to a lot of creative people, they kind of flounder around and they could do this, could do that. Charlie was brilliant. That's the issue we've got to solve. And you learn from him. The other thing that he did at Saatchi's, which I think was brilliant, he made everybody there believe they could be better. And he had that great skill of going, I don't care, if I've had an idea and somebody else has had an idea, that idea is better than me. That's the one I'm going to go for, because it's ultimately going to make me famous. But I've moved on because, it was his agency, it was his vision. And in the end, our kind of view of where we wanted to go was changing. And, the chance to sort of join TBWA came up. And again, I thought that was interesting. And that's where I met John and Nigel, that eventually became BBH in 1982.
Because you were a founder of TBWA when you was American
London
agency.
office, yeah.
Yeah, London office, yeah.
It was the worst launch of any agency in the history of advertising, actually. It was so bad, a week after we launched, nobody could remember we were there at all. It was just, it taught me a lesson in how to launch an agency, which we corrected when we launched BBH, but that's another long, long story.
And I was going to ask you about BBH, because I remember your original logo was your three
signatures, yeah.
Before it was the black sheep.
Yeah. Well, that was a sort of signing on the dotted line. You know, it was our responsibility. So your name was there. That was the idea. But the black sheep, which came out of a poster that was there, which I'd done, it was the first piece of creative work we did at BBH, was we'd won Levi's, and they said to us, you know, we've got all these posters, and we're launching black denim. And so we came up with that idea. And I think it was quite interesting because they suddenly thought, oh God, we've hired this agency, and oh, where's the picture of the jeans? You know, and we said, well, no, everybody knows what a pair of jeans looks like. We want to focus on the fact that they're black. But anyway, the point about that was they bought it, it ran, and it was very successful. And it was like ripple dissolve. So, you know, so 1995, we're moving into these new offices in just behind Carnaby Street, Kingley Street. And we're talking to the designer, architect about that. And I say, look, I want a big flag outside with BBH going down it, because so you can see it, because it's a very narrow street. And he said, you're not allowed to. You can't, planning permission, you can't have that. But you can put a logo up. And we went, logo? We're an advertiser. We don't have a fucking logo. What are you talking about? You know, clients have logos. We don't have a logo. And, oh, God. And I remember it. Nigel and I were in the meeting. And it was late in the afternoon, late in the evening, and we left it. We were walking down the stairs of the building that we were going to occupy. And we both looked at each other. And we said, but actually, we do have a logo. We keep talking about the black sheep. And we said, that's it. It's our logo. And we got to the bottom of the stairs. We said to the designer, we've got a logo. It's a black sheep. Put it up outside. And that's where it came about. But the point about that is that it comes, you know, it comes out of what you do. Your things you do, the things you are, come from what you do. And that's the important lesson there.
Because the zig, not zag, which is the headline on that ad.
Was that, yeah, when the world zigs.
That's almost like the definition of what you did.
Yeah. Funny enough, actually, when we did that, I did that with Barbara Noakes, and I didn't actually want to put the line on. I just wanted it to be, because I have that minimalist kind of view of just a poster, black Levi's. And I thought, putting words on it, bloody writers, always putting fucking, oh God, more words. I used to walk around the agency just to annoy the writers, telling them that, you know, words were a barrier to communication.
But don't you find writers always try to put words in to spite us?
Yeah. And I got a chance, actually, to work with those who know Abram Games. And we were doing a beer ad, and I wanted him to do it. And he came in, a fantastic man, really lovely. And he looked at what we'd done, and he just said, I'm not sure I can do this, I just don't have the time, but may I make a suggestion? And he took about 4 of the words off, and he said, that's a much better poster now. And I always remember, you said, take words off. It's a poster. Speak visually.
But he was a war artist, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was famous, you know, Dig for Britain and stuff like that. Brilliant. And he was a lovely, lovely man. But that great lesson about, you know, take words out. But I did, you know, to be honest with you, when the world zigzag, I just thought it was superfluous. But yeah, it is, you know.
Well, it worked as a kind of theme for the agents.
Still would have been better without it. Anyway. You're always dissatisfied. Whatever you do, you look back, oh, God, if only I could do that again, I'd do this and do that to it.
Well, one of the questions someone suggested that we should ask you is there any work you've done that you really hate?
Oh, huge. I mean, vast. I mean, I've got drawers full of it. I mean, it's complete and absolute shit. I mean, you know, you this idea that you know everything you do is wonderful and turns to, you know, it's not. You do, because in many ways what you're doing is you're trying desperately to do something very different. You know, so you're always kind of, you know, when you present an idea and somebody goes, this is really great, John, I can see how that works, you know it's a failure. because they've obviously seen it before, and so you're trying to push the edges of the envelope all the time. And of course you're going to trip up and do things which just don't work. And I think it's, people say to me, do you learn from your mistakes? And I say, absolutely not. I'm not learned one thing from any of the mistakes I've made, because every time you sit down to do something, you're trying desperately to do something different, to do something better, to do something new. And you're starting from scratch every time. And if you kind of think about your failures, all it will do is make you, it'll inhibit you, as opposed to just forget it. Forget it. It's in the bin. Don't worry about it. Carry on.
Because I read recently that someone was saying that they think that society now demonizes failure, and yet without failure, you haven't really got the opportunity to sort of do brave new things. And so we've got this kind of standoff, especially in education, is one of the
I mean, people say, failure is a great way of learning. You don't want your doctor to say to you as you're giving you some, I'm sorry you've got that. By the way, failure is a great way. Sorry. Yes, I mean, I think in certain industries, you learn from it. You're doing, you're researching a drug or something like that. I'm sure you go through a process. But we, by and large, are trying to create something new every day. And I think that's one of the great problems that most creative careers last 10 years. 10 years, and then if you're lucky, you can go on repeating what you've done. But by and large, we have to come in every day, or you have to come in every day and think of a new idea. And that new idea can't be like yesterday's idea. So you have to stay fresh. You have to kind of stay at the cutting edge of kind of pushing the boundaries and always learning, always experiencing things, going outside your own comfort zone. And that way, you'll turn a 10-year career into a 15, 20, 30-year career. So it's very important. But, people talk a lot about failure. And it's like if you're a film director, you see it happen, don't you? Film director makes a great movie, gets an Oscar, next movie gets all the money in the world, and it's a complete flop. Now, what do? Do they go back and go, I'll make more movies like the one that made an Oscar? Or they just have to go, no, I just have to keep going forward and make something great and have the courage to be, prepared that it might go wrong. Yeah, it might go wrong.
And that's something you talk about in your books, actually, that sort of theme of constant reinvention and kind of being brave. Brian obviously referenced one of your books. You've written 3, Hegarty on advertising, Hegarty on creativity, and the turning intelligence into magic. I noticed they're all published by Thames and Hudson, which is an arts bookseller. Was that a conscious choice?
No, they came to me and said, that's 2 books, by the way, not 3. I should do a 3rd one, but I think, oh God, no, I can't, more words, more words. Oh, but Being an art Thames and Hudson came to me and said, would I do a book on advertising? Because, really the most significant book was Ogilvy, and that's now like 30 years old, which actually I thought was a terrible book. And in it, he doesn't mention television once. Anybody read it? He didn't mention television once, and he has all the rules about how you do things, which I thought creative. That's why I said in my book there are no rules. But they came to me and said, "Would I do it?" I kept saying no, and wonderful editor convinced me. And so I sort of said, "Okay, Andrew." I said, "How many words do you think I'll have to write?" And he said, "Well, we reckon about 65,000. I'm going, oh shit. I spent my career taking words out. Now I've got to write 65,000. But there were 2 pieces of advice I remember, or experience, and I got to interview a wonderful author who said to me, we were talking about stuff, and he said to me, "John, when are you going to write your book?" And I said, no. I'm an art director. I work with a writer and trying to make it easy. And he said this wonderful thing, and he said, "But John," he said, "writing is just describing pictures." And I thought it was a wonderfully liberating way of talking about writing. So when I was doing this, I was thinking about that. And the other was narrative arc. You've got to have a narrative arc, so that you know when the book starts, you know when it's going to end. And I remember Peter Mayle's book, A Year in Provence, was just, I thought, a genius book, because it starts in January, and you know when it's going to end in December, don't you? It's great, and each chapter is a month. I thought, what genius!
Yeah, it's
you
a
know?
clue in the title.
And so you kind of take those pieces, and so I was able to do it. But funny enough, actually, when I got into it, I quite enjoyed it. Although I do find some people find writing very easy, I'm unbelievably lazy, and I just find sitting down writing kind of it's hard work. But once you're into it, you can do it. But just describing pictures was a great way of talking.
Do you think in pictures? Some people
I'm
think
sure I do. I don't think in Franklin Gothic Extra Bold or Univers. I know I do, but we do. We are visual creatures, and that's why we talked at BBH about developing, and I'd love to do a talk on it actually about visual narrative, and that taking all the work we did, and there are no words in it, but yet they tell quite complicated stories, and that was kind of forced upon us because the Levi's campaign was across Europe, so therefore, languages was going to be a problem. So we weren't the ones who invented it, but we used visual language, visual narrative to tell a story. And it's amazing what you can do. And it was quite often teams would come to BBH, they get to work on Levi's, and they'd start writing a script for it. They'd start writing words and dialogue, and you go, no, just think in pictures. So I think you do that. I want to say something here, because it was picked up about this whole thing of creativity as a green industry, and which I thought, whoever said that line about carbon. Cannes last year, I gave a talk about how trying to convince clients, I spent my life trying to convince clients to do better work. I've always found work from one angle, then another angle. And I really do think that we should now start talking about creativity as a green industry. Because the point that Patrick pointed out, how much energy is going into digital marketing, is just unbelievable. And most of it is being rejected. So we are pushing more rubbish at people, trying to get people to buy stuff. And that rubbish that we're pushing out, not we, the industry, is actually costing the planet. And I think we should be saying to our clients, if you care about your global footprint, you've got to have better ideas, because better ideas don't need so much energy behind them. Because word of mouth is the most important medium you can ever engage with. And that is free, and that comes with no impact upon the planet.
Yeah, that's
apart from if you're talking bullshit. So I think that whole thing about our industry, great industry, is a green industry. Great, these awards. I think all the awards, I said at Cannes, we should make the lion green. That went down like a lead balloon, but anyway.
Well,
that was
but to that point, I mean, we had lots of conversations.
I'm having a go at you, aren't I?
We had lots of talk about the accountability of advertising. We were a bit like, it's a little bit out of our hands to a certain extent. It's media companies and clients. And we feel, not to be defensive, but we were a little bit like, well, we're pushing the ideas and we're constantly being dumbed down.
Yeah.
So we were like at a loss really in the conversations we had as to what we can do. And so Rick's idea was actually make it a crime, make it like you accountable for actually getting a certain kind of hit rate or engagement rate. Otherwise, you pay a big fine, which might legislate against it. But
I mean, it really upsets me that our industry, like, for instance, the government does something about obesity. All right, a big issue, real problem. And the first thing they do is say, well, we're going to stop advertising before 9 o'clock. Now, I actually agree with that. But they don't turn around to the food companies and say, why didn't you stop making this shit? They don't, do they? They just, you carry on making the shit. What we'll do is we'll stop people, advertising it before 9 o'clock. I mean, and we get the blame. It's kind of us that's creating obesity. We haven't made that rubbish. You could argue, well, why are you advertising it? That's a different matter. But it's advertising that constantly gets blamed. And that really annoys me and upsets me. It doesn't take the credit for the other great things that it does.
So in a way, you touch on that a little bit with your business of creativity.
Business of creativity,
which I think is quite inspiring. I work at Deloitte. There's a lot of very super intelligent people there who've got fuck all idea about anything creative. And yet they do listen because they're intelligent people.
Yeah.
And you think, well, maybe in a little way, we're kind of making a little dent here. But what you've done is gone out and almost challenge people to be more creative and think in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, it comes from the fact that, you know, business has got to view creativity not as something that it occasionally engages in, but is actually central and core to what they're doing. Actually, setting up a business, creating a business, is a creative act. You know, you have to have an idea. You have to decide what you're going to make, what's the product going to be called, what's the service going to be called, how's it going to look, what's it going to do. And all those are creative acts. Innovation in the company is a creative act. But the trouble is, so many companies, if you use the word creative, they all, I don't know about that. And of course, we're all creative. No, that's what makes us seem different from animals. You know?
Why is that, though? Is that partly like our education system that makes people think that way?
I think partly, yeah. I think partly people don't engage with things if they don't understand them. You know, you don't. So what I'm trying to do with this is to get business to understand that creativity is central to their success, and we were lucky, you know, that McKinsey, one of your competitors, had come out with a report saying actually those businesses that engage with creativity do create better returns for their shareholders. So when we were launching, we had that, and the fact that we were passionately trying to get companies to understand how important creativity is to their success, their future. And it's a kind of, not a mission, but that sounds awful, but I'm very excited about it and about pushing businesses to understand that. But they won't engage with it if they don't understand it, and nobody likes to look stupid. You know, it's the one thing you've got to realize in life. Nobody likes to look stupid. So if you go into a meeting with somebody who doesn't really understand creativity, their fear is that they're going to look stupid. So they start rejecting, they pushing back. Instead of, if they understood it a little bit more, it doesn't be, you know, Michelangelo. I understand what it is. I understand, you know, how to define creativity, 2 types of creativity, what's at the core of creativity. You've given them a kind of groundwork to kind of cope with this meeting where important decisions are going to be made, because creativity is the future. You know, we talked about AI. I mean, AI is going to be very, very important. I mean, we've got to engage with it. We've got to, but it, you know, it looks backwards. Remember that with AI. It doesn't look forward. It doesn't get up in the morning and go, oh my God, I'm inspired by that sunrise, or I've just had a sad phone call from a friend and it's turned the way I'm thinking, or anything like that. I mean, it scoops up all the shit as well as all the good stuff. You know, it doesn't know the difference. You know, I read something on the weekend in the FT about 3 books to be read about to read on it. The author made a very good point, and he said it takes about 22 hours to teach somebody how to drive. All right? AI has now spent 200 million hours trying to work out how to get a car to drive autonomously. So, you know, we've got to remember what the brain can do. We shouldn't be in awe of that. We should respect it. It's going to be very interesting. Use it. You know, it's going to be an incredible tool, just as a camera is an incredible tool. You know, a pen was an incredible tool.
Yeah. Well, no, you talk in your, I think it's this week's post, you talk about creative philosophy. And you have 3 questions that you ask people that they should ask themselves from a creative philosophy. And I'm going to ask you the same questions, if that's okay. So you say, what are your greatest hits? When did it get personal? And where have you felt the most inspired?
Well, I think I'll go, where am I most inspired? I'm most inspired by being around really, really interesting people. And I think that was always why, you know, we tried to be central as an agency in an interesting place and get lots of great people to come to us and be a part of us. And to get them to bounce off each other, rub off each other, you know, then go and do your work and not be kind of, you know, this thing of a brainstorm session, which has never, ever created a great idea. There is no, in the history of the world, there is no idea of a great idea coming out of a brainstorm session. None. But people go on doing it.
Yeah, I echo that completely.
But I think but the philosophy really comes down to what do you believe in? You You know, what do you, and I, very early in my life, I was asked to give a talk on what did I look for in a great idea. And I kind of thought, oh, something I like, which makes a very short talk. So, and I had to go away and think about it. And I realized all the things I liked, all the work I liked, the stuff that inspired me, had irreverence at heart. And I realized, and my work had that, and I realized that was my driving philosophy, irreverence. I was trying to be irreverent because I felt that kind of stirred it up and got people to think about things. And so I developed a talk around irreverence and why that was important, and how where art went from revering to being irreverent. An interesting progression. I always found it interesting to go outside your own industry. I was just saying to Adrian, you know, one of the things, you know, I always used to say to people, I work in advertising, I don't live in advertising. I don't want to live in advertising. In fact, actually, I never really liked advertising. You look and think of it, you know, 90% of it is just awful.
Yeah.
And probably now about 98% of it is awful. I just hated it, you know. I saw what could be done when we looked at the great work coming out of New York in the 60s and thought, wow, that could change things. So that, you know, you want to try and inspire.
And lastly, before everyone can go and have another drink.
Yeah, have another drink, get your awards.
You run a vineyard now, you have a vineyard.
For all kinds of stupid reasons, completely stupid, I have a vineyard.
And how similar is running a vineyard to running a creative department?
Not at all. Nothing about it. You know, and the other thing you work out, I always say this, I now have God as one of my partners. And let me tell you, all that bollocks about, you know, I made the world in 6 days and took the 7th off. Yeah, come down to my vineyard and have a look at what he does. You know, go and make it rain on sort of reasonable amounts. So I'm in partnership with God, who doesn't answer emails, doesn't, you know. But it's good I like doing something that's outside of my comfort zone. That was enjoyable. My wife, if she was here, would say, "No, you don't. You're mad. You should sell it now." You know.
I bet the labels are beautiful, though.
They are lovely. Yes, I do like the labels. Designed by Alan Aboud, who is a wonderful designer. Worked with Paul Smith for 20-odd years. But it's a lovely thing to do, to step outside your world. And nobody gives a shit about what you did in advertising. They just, can I just taste the wine, please? You know, that you know, it's a great leveler, which I enjoy that. I enjoy it.
Well, on that note, we should let everyone go and have
a glass of wine, yeah.
Thank you very much, Sean, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, fine pleasure. Thank you for my award.